Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for our panel discussion titled The ADA Generation at Work. My name is Daniel Van Sant, and I am the Director of Disability Policy at the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement. The Harkin Institute is a nonpartisan think tank that works to advance public policy best practices in 4 key areas of public policy that were central to the career of Senator Tom Harkin of Iowa. These areas are retirement security, wellness and nutrition, labor and employment, and people with disabilities. If this is your first time joining one of our events, I invite you to follow the Harkin Institute on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to get notifications of our future programming. As you might know, Senator Harkin was the lead sponsor of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, which turns 32 years old tomorrow. To celebrate this anniversary, we have gathered 4 young professionals from different parts of the country and who work in different fields to tell us about their lives and careers as part of the ADA generation. While there is still much work to be done to fully realize the world as envisioned in the ADA, today, we are choosing to celebrate how far our community has come by highlighting the incredible careers and paths taken by our 4 panelists. Paths that were opened up for them 32 years ago when the ADA was signed into law. In order to make this panel accessible for our panelists and our viewers, I will introduce our panelists and call on them one at a time to have them present information about themselves in the format of their choice. I have also provided our panelists with questions ahead of time so that they had the ability to prepare answers for the questions. Because of this desire to give equal access to all of our panelists, we will not be able to take questions live from the audience today. As is standard with all programming from the Harkin Institute, we are providing American Sign Language and Communication Access Real-Time Translation, or CART, for this panel as well. This panel is being recorded and will be available for future viewing after we're able to upload the video with the appropriate captions. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Jen Brooks. Jen Brooks received her PhD in sociology at Syracuse University with a specialization in disability. She joined the Yang Tan Institute on Employment and Disability in September 2021 as a postdoctoral associate. Jen's research lies at the intersection of disability, intersectionality, and the labor market. Specifically, her research examines how certain status-based characteristics, like race, ethnicity, gender, and disability type, intertwine with an individual's disability status to shape their labor market outcomes. So now, with hopefully the appropriate technology, I would like to introduce Dr. Jen Brooks.
Good morning, my name is Jen Brooks, and I am a researcher at the Lisa Yang and Hockey Tan Institute on Employment and Disability, YTI, at Cornell University. Today, I will discuss how my passion for disability rights activism fundamentally shaped my educational journey and led me to YTI. Before we get started, I would like to thank Daniel and the Harkin Institute for inviting me to speak with you all today. It is truly an honor to have the opportunity to speak on how my experiences, both inside and outside academia, shaped my career trajectory. I picture my career path occurring in steps, no pun intended, just a helpful, but slightly ableist, metaphor. That's better. I encountered the first of these steps during my junior year of high school. At my high school, all rising juniors were required to complete a summer internship. When the school posted the internship acceptances, to my shock, I was the only student not on the list. This embarrassing situation was not due to any lack of academic success, my qualifications as a job candidate, or any blemish on my permanent record, but simply because my disability labeled me as unemployable in the eyes of society. This experience sparked my lifelong passion as an employment and disability rights advocate. So, when I entered college, I knew that I wanted to go into the field of employment and disability advocacy, but had no clue what that would look like or even what major would help me get there. That all changed, however, when I discovered sociology during my freshman year. Through sociology, I was introduced to both theoretical and empirical tools that furthered my understanding of ableism and how it interacts with the labor market. Sociology also taught me how certain markers of an individual's identity, such as race, gender, and disability, are socially constructed. For instance, while someone may have a physical limitation, such as the inability to walk, society interprets this limitation as negative and provides justification for the marginalization of those with this inability. Sociology also provided me with the empirical tools to measure this marginalization through quantitative research. With these tools, I, and other researchers, uncover meaningful statistics that quantify disabled people's widespread unemployment and underemployment. For example, one of the most widely cited statistics in my field is the fact that while roughly 39% of people with disabilities ages 21 to 64 reported paid employment in 2019, the employment rate for those without disabilities was nearly 81%. During my summer internship at the World Institute on Disability, WID, I put my knowledge of sociology and its empirical tools into practice. At WID, I worked on multiple research projects and discovered how vital original research could be in the fight for equal rights for those with disabilities, and I decided that the best way to serve my community was by gaining the tools and knowledge to do that research. So, after my time at WID, I decided to pursue my PhD to gain the skills I needed to become a sociological researcher. During my time in grad school, I studied the intersection of labor and disability from a sociological perspective. I developed three main research areas around this theme. When first exploring the relationship between labor and disability, I became interested in how people with disabilities feel about their jobs. Specifically, I wanted to know if, and why, people with disabilities have lower levels of job satisfaction than those without disabilities. While there are limited national data sources that can answer this question, I was able to use the General Social Survey, GSS, to find that people with disabilities report lower levels of job satisfaction than those without disabilities, partly because they feel a lack of respect at work. With the rise of the Trump administration, my work shifted more towards social justice, where I published a series of briefs and op-eds disentangling how the previous administration's policies, especially the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, increased the labor market vulnerability of people with disabilities. Finally, my dissertation played into this shift towards more activist-oriented research by examining how race, gender, and disability intertwine to shape an individual's chances of labor market disadvantage. While this intersectional framework was originally intended to be a small part of my dissertation, given the current political and cultural moment, I believe that it is now, more than ever, crucial to highlight the experiences of those most marginalized. As a result, intersectionality became the driving theoretical framework of my dissertation and has been a fundamental part of my research during my postdoc. In sum, my journey to YTI began with a step. That step, however, propelled me into a lifelong career of employment and disability advocacy.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks, for that great information. I think it's especially helpful for the young disabled people watching this webinar today and who will be watching the recording to learn step by step, again, pun intended if I can steal your joke, how you went from high school through college, grad school, and now into your career as an academic. I know everybody watching will be excited to follow your career and the research that you continue to put out. Our next panelist is AJ Link. AJ is openly autistic. He received his JD from the George Washington University Law School and his LLM in space law at the University of Mississippi School of Law. He is the inaugural director of the Center for Air and Space Law Task Force on Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity in Aerospace, and is an adjunct professor of space law at Howard University School of Law. AJ is the communications director for Mission Astro Access and works as a research director for the JUICE Ad Astra project. He serves as the Space Law and Policy Chair for Black in Astro and was a founding president of the National Disabled Law Students Association. AJ is a policy analyst for the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. He has been actively involved with disability advocacy in the Washington, D.C. area and nationally within the United States. He serves on several advisory boards and steering committees that focus on disability advocacy and broader social justice movements. And with that, we'll bring AJ to the stand.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Are you with us?
Hey y'all, I'm here. I'm AJ. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here. I am a Black male with a beard. I have on kind of a maroonish shirt and a blue hat. And behind me is a kind of gallery type wall that my partner did. And I'm based in what's called DC on stolen Anacostan land. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I think today's celebration and all the 88th anniversary stuff shows that disability visibility is having a bit of a moment right now, which is amazing. And the disability rights movement, the ADA, the broader disability justice work that happens behind the scenes are all incredibly important for disabled folks. And what I work on is extending this disability justice work and this mindset into space to get radical galactic accessibility. The last few decades have seen a growing push to combat systems of oppression, especially over the past couple of years, like white supremacy, patriarchy, heteronormativity, ableism, and to a lesser extent, coloniality and colonialism. To me, this is all one movement, or at least it should be, right? I know that oftentimes we're kind of pitted against each other and a bit of oppression Olympics, but it's all the same thing. And we can use the radical accessibility provided to us by the disability justice movement as a tool in this multidimensional liberational framework. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out AFCO's book, Racism as Zoological Witchcraft. It talks a little bit more about multidimensional liberation framework. But the work I do for Mission Astro Access specifically focuses on combating ableist narratives about who can and should go to space. This includes the stigma around disabled spaceflight participants and the pervasiveness of disabilitophobia, or the fear of disability or becoming disabled in space. For many folks, disability is looked at as some kind of problem that needs to be fixed, and oftentimes disabled people are viewed as helpless. Mission Astro Access wants to push back against that. Disabled folks have tons of unique skill sets and talents that can be more advantageous in space. Disabled people will also be helpful in the future because space is a disabling environment, and disabled people have tons of experience navigating environments that are disabling to them because they're not accessible. As an openly autistic disabled person, I've seen the way ableism has impacted my community and how it shapes policy decisions. That's part of the reason why I decided to get into public policy advocacy and do the work that I do at the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. It's personally really frustrating watching disabled and neurodiverse folks being pushed to the margins when it comes to policy, decisions, and designs. Disabled individuals are often the last group to be thought of, if they're even thought of at all, when making these decisions. Radical accessibility kind of reverses this, as it should be. It puts disabled folks at the center and the first group of individuals who are thought of, because this disability is cross-cutting in terms of identity, and it should be the foundation for any movement for social equity. Instead of trying to fix today's broken systems and structures through piecemeal types initiatives, why not imagine a new and better future built on radical accessibility centered on multidimensional liberational framework, which has radical accessibility at its center. So I want to make a note right here about the word radical. I know a lot of times people get pushback, especially non-progressive folks or moderate folks thinking like, we don't want to do things that are radical. But I think that radical should be provocative, but it shouldn't carry negative connotations. Radical accessibility just means that spaces are accessible as possible. And I think that is a radical reimagining of what people think of accessibility, especially when we do things like this, when we talk about the ADA and meeting ADA requirements. Just because something meets legal ADA requirements doesn't mean it's as accessible as it should be, right? Accessible can be not just physical, but cognitive and social accessibility. Accessible from a financial perspective. There are so many different ways that we can reimagine what accessibility truly means, and I think that should be radical. True access eliminates social, cognitive, psychological, and financial barriers that exclude folks from certain spaces, and I'm sure there are more barriers than just that. Astro Access likes to say that if we can make space accessible, we can make any space accessible, and that for me is truly what radical galactic accessibility means. The future of aerospace and space exploration should be rooted in this kind of radical accessibility perspective. That includes the laws we make to protect people in space. Some of my work has focused on incorporating crypt legal theory into a new human rights framework specifically designed for space law. I like to call it interplanetary human rights, and I'm kind of building out, interplanetary law as a concept. But I don't think you have to be super interested in the work that I do in that perspective to understand how broad and how important having this radical accessibility framework should extend to, right? Like how we should incorporate it in everything that we do. So I'm sure you're kind of like, what the hell does this have to do with the 80th anniversary, in a US based law? And why am I talking about space and my passion? But I think I would say that we should never be too afraid to dream big about what accessibility can be beyond what it is right now. And I think space gives us that opportunity. A lot of times with the work that I do in the space communication sphere is, space gives us all this creativity to think about solutions in space, but then we can take those new creative solutions and bring them back here to Earth, right? And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to just dream a little bit bigger about what accessibility means to us. Space allows us to reframe what accessibility and access looks like and what it should be and what it could be. We can create new technology, we can create new structures, and we can start from a point of universal accessibility moving forward instead of trying to retrofit accessibility into our current tools and spaces that maybe aren't really accessible. So I know that I have a time cap, and I hope I didn't go over it. I haven't been looking at the clock. But thank y'all so much for having me. I feel really honored to be here, and I'm excited to hear what Megan has to say and any questions that we may have. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you, AJ. I think personally, I think that what you just talked about has everything to do with the ADA anniversary, because what we're talking about today and in other events this week is a law that was established to address accessibility in our communities here in the United States. And that law was, passed 32 years ago. And it eventually led to the creation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities about 16 years ago. And that, of course, had a ripple effect across our planet. And now today, we have an expert like you talking about expanding these principles into outer space. As you just mentioned, space policy and law is rapidly developing as we speak, as you literally are speaking now. And I think we are all proud to know that we have someone like you representing our perspectives at that table as these policies and laws are being created. So thank you for that work. Our next panelist is Edward Esbeck. Edward serves as the core faculty for self-advocacy and is a self-advocacy coordinator for Iowa's University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, or UCED. In the fall of 2017, Mr. Esbeck became the first ever self-advocacy trainee for the Iowa Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities Program, or ILEND. Mr. Esbeck drafted a series of recommendations for improving curriculum accessibility and created a self-advocacy trainee handbook. As an ILEND medium-term trainee the following year, Mr. Esbeck mentored the new self-advocacy long-term trainees. He taught classes in partnership with the Iowa City Community School District and created a self-advocacy training video for the Centers for Disabilities and Development Transition Clinic. As a self-advocate, Mr. Esbeck became the first non-clinical ILEND trainee to win the prestigious Alfred Healy Leadership Award. He used funds from this award to travel to his native country, Uganda, where he shared his lived experience and taught classes about self-advocacy to families and students. In addition to serving as an ILEND coordinator, Mr. Esbeck works on a variety of USED projects related to healthcare, education, and transition. He is a member of the AUCD LEND Persons with Disabilities Work Group and active on many additional boards and councils, including Access to Independence, which is a Center for Independence Living, and the Child Health Specialty Clinic's Family Advisory Council. Mr. Esbeck's expertise is in such high demand that he actually had a conflict with today's panel, but has provided us with recorded remarks and recorded answers to our questions that we'll have later. So we'll bring up Edward's video now.
Hey, my name is Edward Esbeck. I'm with the self-advocate coordinator. How do I become a self-advocate coordinator? I came from Uganda and I moved to the USA in 2014 as I lived in Uganda for many years. We decided to move to the US, my brother and I, and my dad. So I went to the high school in Iowa City, and when I graduated, I didn't know what to do. But I got connected with a job coach. Then I went into work. I worked at Hy-Vee for about 3 years, and I got connected with in the Hy-Vee where I was working, and I remember coming to a meeting with my job coach where I made a lot of connection with other people. So that gave me the opportunity to talk about what is important to me. I figured that along the way, like what can I do to change the world? I thought about that and I was like, I have this idea that I'm gonna be myself, that I'm gonna pick up for myself, and that I can make a change. From Uganda, I was an advocate, but I didn't know what advocacy meant back then. And when I came to the United States in 2014, I thought I was a homecoming king, so people had to vote to get me elected. So that gave me the opportunity to learn. When I started working at Hy-Vee, that gave me the opportunity to get the job I wanted to, but it wasn't the job I really wanted to do. So I was connected with the job because I connected to work as LEND. LEND is a leadership program for professionals, and I was the first self-advocate to be in LEND. I was given the opportunity to go back to Uganda. When I went back to Uganda, I educated people with disability and without disability. That was excellent. I also, in LEND, I mentored a LEND trainee. that give me the opportunity to learn other people that they have leadership. And I grew up in that area of learning leadership. Which gave me the opportunity to do what I love. I also when I came back from Uganda, after then, they offered me a job to work on the youth as a self-advocate coordinator, which I am now. I am a young professional who is working with people with disabilities every day. I created a video for the transition clinic. And that gave me the opportunity to work with patients and to work with a professional in that career. I have also worked with other people, with other organizations. I worked grants with some people, and I work right now. I'm working on many projects and attend many boards. And yeah, and one thing I'm gonna say, when you mentor people, you figure out what you want, what they want. It is very important that we focus on what we know we can do. Yes, we know we can do everything for ourselves, but we sometimes get the help we need to sustain in work and learn that we can work hard and fulfill our goals and dreams. Sometimes that may be such from high B where when you get out of high school and build your way up. Sometimes it can be a job you may like to do, but you don't know how to get to that job. You have to work hard. You have to continue looking for what you want to do in your life. Thank you. And this is my opening.
Thank you, Ed. We'll hear more about this later from Ed and the other panelists, but I really appreciate how you describe being a mentor and a mentee at the same time. As you're learning from others, others are also able to learn from you. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to remember in our careers. There are the people that came before us, and there are others following in our footsteps. And I think today's event illustrates that, right? We have the history of the ADA that paved the way for people like myself and our panelists, and we also have the next generation coming up behind all of us as well. So I love the way that, Ed, you describe being in the center of that mentorship spectrum. Our final panelist is Megan Shanks. Meg is a faculty and program assistant for the master's program in international development at Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C., USA, where she develops and strengthens student skills in project design and implementation for social change. Megan is one of the faculty supporting the new Deaf-Centered, Disability-Inclusive, Disaster Risk Reduction, and Emergency Planning Graduate Certificate Program, known as the Disaster and Emergency Planning Certificate at Gallaudet University. Megan is also a PhD student in the School of International Service at American University in Washington, D.C., USA, where her research topics include international education policymaking and implementation around disability and development, language justice, and intersectionality within the international development field. And with that, I welcome Meg to the screen.
Hello, everyone. First of all, my name is Megan, and I am speaking through my fantastic interpreter. So I am wearing a blue dress, and my hair is wrapped in an African pattern fabric. I'm wearing glasses, earrings, a watch, and a ring. I'm a Black woman, and I'm using American Sign Language to communicate. First, I would like to thank you, Dan, and the Harkin Institute for inviting me with such an honored opportunity to be a part of this panel. As a deaf Black woman, it is of crucial importance for me to be able to share my story in order to support the necessary conversations to achieve our long-term goals as we have as a disability community. I was born deaf to a hearing family, and I was born 1 year before the ADA was passed. My mother was told by doctors that I would not graduate high school and to not teach me how to sign, that it wasn't worth it. I am grateful to say that she did not listen. Clearly, we have proven them wrong. And she really fostered the fact that I got a quality education. And that meant I had to move to various schools and various programs to make sure that I could have access to my education. Even though this was after the passage of the Individual with Education Act, the IDEA, and the American with Disabilities Act. But where I lived, there was not a lot of people who were in compliance or fully understood those laws. So having full access to a signing environment was really tough. My journey was not linear. My educational journey ties into how I think about my career, especially as I pursue my doctorate degree as a PhD student. My goal is to maintain my position as an advocate, to continue to support and assist others. I first started with my undergraduate education, and I went to a private school. I went to a private college, and they had really no information or experience working with deaf individuals until I came along. So I faced a lot of barriers, but I had a really strong relationship with the accessibility office at that university, and they encouraged me to do an internship and to do an exchange program. So at that time, international development and social justice work wasn't really where my motivation was at that time. I applied to the MIUSA, the Mobility International USA program, and that was in 2008. That tells you a little bit about how old I am, but I digress. In 2008, I was accepted into a program that took me to Costa Rica. That is when I started working with other deaf people in international spaces, and that's what led me to the international development career. After that, after I graduated, I moved to Kenya, where I was working with local disability organizations, DPOs, that was led by a deaf-blind individual. My goal was to first support that organization and their capacity to foster development. Now, in that time, Kenya had just passed their constitutional right to recognize people with disability. And so DPOs at that time were really advocating hard on a governmental level for the recognition for people with disabilities. After that, I moved back home and I hit the ground running. I really wanted to work more with the international development spaces and how to include people with disability and language justice rights. And so I decided to move to Washington, D.C. That's where I did my graduate studies at Gallaudet University. Funnily enough, I teach international development in the master's program, and I was the first student in this international development master's program. So that's a really unique part of my journey. As a student, I did a lot of internships. Now, people will tell you all the time that internships are important, and I am here to attest that they are of critical importance. Do as many as you can. That's what helped me get to where I am. My first internship program as a master's student was to work with USICD, which is the U.S. International Council on Disability, and that's where I met Daniel. And so that program was the support was a part of the World Learning. Sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. And so my second year of graduate school, I was working at the US State Department under a special advisory program. And at that time, I was working alongside Judith Heumann as a researcher, obviously not alongside her, but underneath her. So through that trajectory, that led me to my final semester of graduate school, where I moved to Germany. There, I worked with CBM in Germany, and I worked with their knowledge, learning, and training department. That led to a position where I worked full-time to support disability and inclusion development within their team. And so that fosters and mediates the learning and knowledge management and capacity development in the DID community of practice. So now my current position as a faculty program assistant is supporting the knowledge of social justice, disability justice, and language justice. How students are learning through project design, inclusive education, development for the change in our career. So my current goal is, how can we expand young professionals with disability in this space? And I think the answer is to start with research. I am a fourth-year PhD student, and I'm going to be defending my perspective this fall before I continue on with more research. Almost there. Deep breaths. And my research topic is about international education policymaking with disability and development, and how we can acknowledge development with language justice and intersectionality, including race, gender, sexuality, language, and all of the other markers that impact how people access education, and then how that ties into a quality career of that person's choice. So my research within the CRPD is allowing me to look at countries to see how prospective countries who have ratified the CRPD work with on a national level. How do they explain the concept of disability and how that impacts the resource distribution in a particular country? So if a country has a negative perspective of disabilities, their policies and resources will reflect that. It will reflect the attitude. However, if you see a country that views biodiversity and disability as something that's positive and accepting and welcoming, then their policies and resources will reflect that also, which leads to a positive impact for people with disabilities and other marginalized communities to be able to access good quality education and good choice outcomes for their career. Now, to conclude that research will be to be continued. The conclusion of that is to come. I'm hoping that my research will allow for some insight on what that process looks like.
Great, thank you, Meg. I really appreciate how your work brings the principle of nothing about us without us to the field of international development. When so many development projects are aimed at serving people with disabilities, it's vitally important to have disabled people leading those projects. This now leads us to the time for questions for our panelists. And like I said, they've been provided the questions ahead of time to be able to give us the best prepared feedback that they can. So after I ask each question, I will announce the order in which we'll call on you. And if any of our panelists would rather type your answers into the chat, I would be happy to read the responses out loud for our viewers that would need assistance with that. So our first question here is comes in a few parts, and it's about mentoring. So, as a young professional with disabilities, can you speak to the effect that mentorship has had in your career and in your life? How do you recommend that other young disabled people find mentors? What, if any, mentorship are you currently looking for? And what, if any, mentorship are you able to provide right now? So for this question, we will start with Ed's video response and then go to AJ, Meg, and Jen.
One thing I'm gonna say that is connected to me to being a good mentor was someone who I working with, and I was as young professional, I was looking for a way how I can get myself to work and cooperate with people, and that network with people gave me that opportunity to be able to show that the mentorship I have right now has grown because of encouraging myself and other people who are in my place, and who have a lot to say about the disability. So I kind of the mentor one of my trainee. I didn't train. I mentored one of the trainee, and then I kind of mentored a faculty, so that the opportunity came along so that I can learn and grow in my place.
Great. AJ, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I think this is AJ speaking. I think the mentorship question is really interesting, at least for me, because I haven't had a ton of mentors. I've always been doing things that are new or don't have a lot of people, people in general, but especially disabled people doing them. And that's part of the reason why I started the National Disabled Law Students Association, because it was really hard to find a group of mentors who were available for disabled law students. There were other programs that had existed, but they weren't well run. And so for me, as someone who likes doing disability advocacy, there are a ton of disabled advocates, but there weren't a ton in higher ed and law school. Like there are people like Lydia Exley Brown, and they are amazing and phenomenal. But there weren't a ton of disabled people doing human rights in outer space. And so for me, it's kind of hard to talk about a mentor experience because I haven't had one. I'm kind of always just trying something new, and if it works out, great. And then hopefully maybe I could be a mentor to other folks, but I haven't had a ton of mentor experience, which is, I think for me, I try to tell folks that it's okay if you can't find a mentor, you can always find a way. But if you can find a mentor, I think that's great and really helpful.
Great, thank you for that. Of course, I would invite anybody watching our webinar, either live today or the recording, that if you think there is something that you could mentor AJ on, that's a great opportunity to reach out and do that if you're working in the same field. So next we'll go to Meg for her answer to this question.
Thank you. I would say, that mentorship has had a major impact on my life and on my career. And I've had mentors from different areas of life that have given me feedback and networks that have been relevant to my areas of interest and concerns, like work in the area of academics, as a PhD student, as an international development worker. And I feel like to find mentors, you need to look for those that you feel are supporting you, that are listening to your questions and providing you with a variety of resources. Also, I would say consider joining different programs, including but not limited to summer programs such as the AAPD. And programs will connect you with mentors that may be the best fit with your professional and your personal goals. Also, I do want to recognize that, sometimes, I didn't have mentors that looked like me. And often that could be a challenge, because we have such a lot of varieties of characteristics. And I'm very intersectional with my gender, my race, my background, that I'm a deaf person, a signer. You're not always going to have a mentor that matches all your characteristics, but it's important that you reach out and they can connect you to those in your community.
Great, thank you. So next we will go to Jen for her answer to the question, and I'm going to read her answer out of the chat while she is on screen. So Jen writes, I think mentorship is important. Honestly, I didn't experience real mentorship later in my career because I think able-bodied people look at you and think you don't need help because you are adopting a super crypt mindset. And I want to make sure I'm giving Jen a chance to have anything else. So then Jen adds, but I have been lucky enough to meet some amazing disabled women who have taken me under their wing. Great, thank you. So we'll go now to our second question for the panelists, which is, what advice would you give to other young disabled people who are either just starting or are in the early stages of their careers? Any lessons you learned or wisdom you'd like to pass along? So for this answer, let's start again with Ed's video and then go to Meg, Jen, and AJ.
Yeah. So being able to find how you want to, how to join a team. Sometimes the team that give you that hope, you find yourself leading the team and mentoring other people because they are in the same. Let's say you're doing a project, you want someone to mentor you. That can be, you're gonna see yourself as stepping up and leading those meetings because of some of your mentoring. So connect with the right people and which can mentor you and let them lead you to what you are doing or what they are doing so that you can talk about stuff, talk to each other about what you are doing at work or what you are gonna be doing for someone. That's the way you're gonna mentor others. And a good mentor is being able, they can be able to listen and you learn from other people. Learn from you and you learn from them. So one of the advices I'm gonna give you is learn from others and listen to others because what they have to say is important as you have. And you what you have to say to them is very important. So encouraging the different voices in your mentorship is very important.
Thank you for that, Ed. So we will go now to Meg. Any advice for the future generation?
Really, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. So I guess I would say that An additional advice I would offer is try to find someone who has similar interest as you, who is in the similar field as you. You're trying to build your career, so your mentor can provide you with ideas, a network, and challenge you to become the person that you can be. In addition to that, I mean, like I just said, becoming a mentor also, that's so important to support your own sense of leadership and supporting and growing more young professional with disabilities.
Great. So Jen, we will go to you next. If you have your answer, you can put it in the chat and I will read it out loud. So Meg's advice for the future, or sorry, Jen's advice for the future generation is to find out what you're good at first and then figure out how it fits within the movement. Jen does have another commitment here at noon Central, 1 Eastern, and so Jen is going to leave our group. And so Jen, thank you for your time with us today. We appreciate everything that you've shared with us. And our final response to this question is from AJ.
Hey y'all, it's AJ. I think for me, something that's really important is not being afraid to take up space and to be your authentic self. It helps not only you thrive when you're able to bring your full self, but it also creates space for the folks behind you. Oftentimes when you're the first into a space or you are the most authentic, of your identity in the space, it gives other people the freedom and the confidence and the comfort knowing that if they want to, they can do it too. And something I've learned is that you're not alone in spaces, whether you are disabled or you're a person of color or you're a Christian person, all these different kinds of unique identities that can be in a workspace. Other people are there and they need community too. And I've found that it's just really helpful to be your most authentic self to the best of your ability in these spaces. And if you can do that, if you're confident enough, and I know there's lots that go into it, but if you're not afraid to do that, it's usually worth your while to do it, and it helps a lot of other people.
Great, thank you. So we'll go on now to our last question. Looking at the time, it looks like we will go a little bit over. Normally, we don't ever want to do that because we want to respect everybody's time and our accommodations. But I know that our panelists have prepared answers for this last question, and I want to make sure that we hear from everybody. So we may just run a few minutes late here, just so you're aware. So our final question here is that the five of us are young enough that we have either mostly or only known a post-ADA world. Tomorrow is the 32nd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so my question for the panelists is, what do you think the future of disability advocacy looks like? And so again, we'll start with Ed's video and then go to AJ and Meg.
The future of self-advocacy to me is the beginning of a change. And when we change who we want to be, and we learn from ourselves as well as we learn from other people, we think of how to be leaders in our society, of how to lead, or how to work with other people. We think we don't think we can do it. Time we take time to find what we want. The future for advocates is to stand up for your rights, and know that your voice is important. Know that you have a lot to offer to the community, and what you give the community is the love of your work, of what you are doing now. in work or school, or even when people don't hear you, they kind of see you doing something. When they can't hear you, they kind of know how to find that, how to get you more connected to other people who can help you. So you need to find that for yourself, and that's the future for the advocacy with the idea.
Great, thank you, Ed. So AJ, what do you think the future of disability advocacy looks like?
I hope we move away from the main focus of disability advocacy being laws and legislation and, you know, I guess, just the legal apparatus and rights. I hope we have a broader understanding of what accessibility means and what it can mean for both disabled folks, but other folks who are excluded, right? Barriers to access are not just impacting disabled folks. And one of the tenets of disability justice is cross movement solidarity, right? Not just cross disability solidarity, but cross movement solidarity. And I hope that the people in power, not just the politicians, but actual people in power, are one more willing to openly identify as disabled, especially with non-apparent disabilities. I know we have wonderful folks like Tammy Duckworth doing amazing work for our community, but more people being willing to say that they are disabled and identify as disabled, and not being something that's stigmatized in leadership, and just creating a more accessible future for everyone. And I hope that disability advocacy is not necessarily mainstream, because once something's mainstream, it becomes commodified, and capitalism corrupts it. But I just hope that we continue to push for a more accessible future and have a really broad understanding of what that means in terms of being accessible for everyone who wants to be in a space.
Thank you. Meg, let's go to you now. What is the future of disability advocacy from your perspective?
Yeah, so I believe that disability advocacy will further evolve into becoming more intersectional. So, for many years, we've seen disability discussed in silos, and now we're seeing conversations expand. And they're including intersectional identities such as class, gender, sexuality, race, religion, language, et cetera, et cetera. The ADA absolutely opened many doors for people with disabilities. However, its scope needs to be expanded to recognize the significance and the complexity of intersectionality. And I feel like that is the key to understanding how to further liberate people with disabilities in all aspects of life, so that it will include education and work and health and more. So I predict and hope to see that happen.
That is a perfect note for our conversation to end on. I want to thank all of our panelists for taking the time to share their experiences with us today. It was great learning about each of you and your careers, and I think I speak for myself and our viewers when I say that we're excited to follow your paths and see what exciting new trails each of you blaze in your work. I want to thank Studio Iowa for producing our webinar today. I want to thank the Kyle Duarte Company for providing American Sign Language interpretation, and Carla Ray from Capital City Real Time for providing CART this morning. Please follow the Harkin Institute on social media to find out when we post this recording of the panel so that you can help our panelists reach an even larger audience. Thank you all for tuning in today, and happy ADA Anniversary Week, everybody.